Well, that's most of what we do is
Aha.
we get people. Well,
And
it's David
we're
Ingram.
on.
We're sitting here. It's Around the World with David Ingram and Richard Pitt. And we're going to start off just kibitzing for a couple of minutes. Well, Shirley Stocker, our first guest, finishes her supper because she only came tonight if I promised him.
Kill the audio.
We got to kill the audio on the other computer over there. And we're going to get a feedback, so that audio's killed.
We're hot, so bring the audio down a bit, Mitch, over here.
Yeah.
Well, the dad also always has his volume cranked.
Well, so we're having fun here. Mitchell's operating. Richard, he used to be the operator. This is what you call home television, Shirley. But
Well,
it's
home
sort of
internet,
fun.
'cause we're out broadcasting as we
By the
learned
time you're
last
finished,
week.
I'll have had my dinner.
Well, you'll have
That's
dinner,
right.
yes.
There you go.
Anyway, we're up. We're going to talk first to Shirley Stocker about Crime Stoppers, and we might talk about the CKNW Orphans Fund. We might even talk about the Variety Club's Telethon of Hearts and so on, because Shirley is one of those ladies that's in here, there, and everywhere. And about 8 o'clock, 5 to 8 or so, we're going to have Jennifer Wade phone in from Amnesty International. And Jennifer's going to tell us what's happened with the John Graham case. And, of course, that goes back to Peltier back in the Wounded Knee when he was arrested many, many, many years later and convicted and so on. And John Graham was just extradited from Canada 2 or 3 years ago and charged with all the same stuff. And there's books written about Wounded Knee, etc.
Mitch?
Nobody really knows whether Peltier is guilty, and I don't think he was for anything I've read, heard, or understood, and I've been to Wounded Knee. And the same thing seems to be true of John Graham. And what they did today or yesterday is they dropped all the federal charges. I mean, here's a man who was extradited from Canada based upon FBI and federal U.S. charges. He's been extradited. He's in jail in the United States, and today they dropped all the federal charges, and now apparently there's some state charges against him. Miscarriage of justice, if that's what they're trying to do. Anyway, Shirley's sitting here and between Richard and I, and this is the first time we've had anybody finishing supper while they're on here, but Shirley didn't have any breakfast, she didn't have any lunch, didn't have anything to eat yesterday, so we had to feed her to get her up here.
The condition was, feed me and I'll come to the show.
Yes. And
And I must say, David, you are quite a good cook. This
You
is
like
an
that?
amazing. This is an amazing.
This is why he
concoction.
keeps recycling wives, because they all come for his cooking.
This,
not
this is a
even
very
remote.
good concoction, I might say.
Well, I do remember my starter wife, Gloria, who we refer to quite regularly and quite fondly. When I married
Starter
her,
wife.
my
Now,
starter
that's an
wife.
interesting concept.
Don't you
Hey,
like
well,
that?
I've had a starter wife, too, you
Starter
know.
wife.
Yeah, well, you had a starter husband.
I never called him a starter husband.
Well, not at
but
the
he
time.
was. You look at your track record since, right? So,
Never mind. We're not going there.
so my starter wife, I can still remember being at my Aunt Bonnie Anderson's on Marine Drive in Vancouver when we came out on the trip we took after we got married. Some people call them a honeymoon. I usually call them the trip. I got an email from a friend the other day. He says, I started my divorce proceedings. And I said, you're not even married. He says, yeah, but I got married last night.
Right. Well,
Anyway.
that's the time to start it.
Making a long story short, my starter wife, I found out after we were married, and we were coming out here on our trip around North America, because we went down Mexico City and all the rest of that stuff, but she couldn't even boil an egg. She'd never boiled an egg in her life. She'd never
Oh.
cooked anything in her life because her mother had done everything. Now she's a gourmet cook. They have, these gourmet dinners where different families get together and stuff.
Because you taught her.
No, not because I taught her. No, she went out and took
I thought
cooking
maybe you were
classes.
going to lay claim to that.
No. I did teach her how to boil an egg, though. That was easy enough. I mean, turn on the water. And the important part about boiled eggs is whether it's a 7-minute egg or an 8-minute egg. Depends on whether it's a small, medium, large, or extra large. Or, of course, an ostrich egg would be a little different. And then I actually made myself a chart, because you know that I live at the 1,000-foot up here. I
Yes.
made myself a little chart as to how far up the hill and what the timing was for up the hill to get the perfect extra large egg.
You are weird.
I'm not weird, it's just that's what we do.
You are weird.
So Shirley Stocker, you've been
Is he
my
not weird?
Hey, I love him anyway.
You've been my friend. You've been my friend.
Yes.
Your son
My
said
son
you're
Mitchell
weird.
is sitting here. He says I'm weird too.
Okay.
You've been my friend. You've been my big sister. You've been my little sister. You've been.
You mean as I gain and lose weight?
as we've gone through
Yes, I know.
the last 35 years or so together.
Yes. Yes.
To give you an example, this lady, I being at the Board of Trade in Vancouver, I think 6 times when I'd actually been a speaker, because I'd
Oh.
run for mayor and I'd done this kind of stuff. And I was a member of the Board of Trade too, but I'd never been to the lunchroom. So I phoned Shirley one day and I said, Shirley, you got to go with me to lunch so that I figure out how to do this. You remember that?
Oh, I do indeed.
Yeah, so you went along and I learned how to sign the bill and all the rest of it. You brought Crime Stoppers. Am I correct in giving you credit for, I mean, I know Bob Stewart and a few other people are involved, but weren't you the guy that phoned Bob Stewart and said, let's bring Crime Stoppers to Vancouver?
Well, there's a fellow by the name of George Cadman, who's a lawyer in town right now.
What's his name?
George Cadman.
Okay, I know that name. Yeah.
So George wasn't necessarily the founder. There were a whole bunch of us that were classed as founders when Crime Stoppers was in Calgary.
Yes.
And they had Crime Stoppers people on the radio in Calgary. And Bob Stewart, the police chief at the time, was also in Calgary. And he heard all this rumbling about what this Crime Stoppers stuff and so on. So he had it on his radar when he came back to Vancouver. And just coincidentally, I had heard it when I was in Calgary working on a particular conference. I don't know what it was at that particular time, and I heard the same thing. And so we sort of commiserated when I came back. And George Cadman and 2 or 3 other people were also hearing little rumors and little things that there was this Crime Stoppers thing. We really didn't know what it was. I mean, we didn't know how it worked. We had really no idea. So we decided to look into it. And George says, well, you're going to need some seed money to get it going so you can buy stationery and do that sort of stuff to get it moving. So we found some $1,000 to get it going, and then we managed to get board members. And the critical thing about Crime Stoppers was we needed someone who was from the media, because Crime Stoppers, as you know, is a 3-pronged thing. It's the community, the media, and the police. And without one of them, the whole program doesn't work.
No community to give the tips. There's
The
no
community
Crime
to
Stoppers.
give the tips and the community to fund the program.
Yeah.
So the community really has a big role in it. The police are the ones who do the investigation, and Crime Stoppers, the program itself, is the organization or the avenue where the community phones in with the tips and tells us where some activity is happening.
No.
So they phone anonymously into Crime Stoppers, into a number.
And that number absolutely is not traceable. They don't do any tracing. There's no,
No.
stoppers. There's no catcher
And when we
on it.
started, there was no call display anyway.
Yeah, but you made sure that doesn't happen.
It does
now.
not happen. It's absolutely anonymous. So the way it works, if there is someone who has information about a crime, any kind of a crime, they can phone the 1-800 number, 1-800-222-TIPS or 8477. And I don't think you can do it now with your Blackberries. I think you have to, put in the full number because TIPS doesn't seem to work with Blackberries.
Well, one time you could just type in tips on 8477 and that got it.
So,
Okay.
but anyway, that's what the phone number is, and that number is right across the country. So that's not just a British Columbia number. It's 1-800-222-8477.
So it works in every city and every jurisdiction.
Throughout
For instance,
Canada.
For instance, in Prince George, if you phoned that number, you'd get a Prince George Crime Stoppers?
What happens is it's truncated so that it goes into one central location, and then the information is taken, and that information is then fired off to the community where the
Oh, I see. So it used
where
to
the
be,
crime
I'm
has
trying to
taken
remember,
place.
was it Dave Barber? Who was
Dave Baker.
Dave Baker, who was the guy that was receiving the Crime Stoppers tips here at one
Yes.
time. So he wouldn't be the person doing that anymore, or?
What we've managed to do now is we have a call center in Ontario, and so the call center takes all the tips from the 1-800.
Okay, so if I phone here, I get somebody in Ontario
Oh,
who
yes,
takes
you
the
get
tip
a-
and then refers it back to North Vancouver RCMP, West Vancouver PD, Vancouver PD,
Yeah, wherever the crime has taken place. The information goes back to the detachment.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually, doesn't it? Because it means that the people that have lots of experience taking the calls get it. They know what to ask. They know what to do. Now,
Yeah, and part of the reason we went into that, and not solely because there's nothing wrong with police taking it, but with police taking the tips, they then have information, and they are police, and they don't really need to have, if someone says, gives a name or something
so
that they
now
shouldn't give.
now the people taking the tips are no longer police. Is that what
No,
you're saying?
not at all.
Okay, but at
There's
one
only
time
there's
they
only
were.
one police officer that I know of in British Columbia, and that's a police officer in Victoria who takes tips. But generally, and if she's not around, then it goes to the call center. So the call center are ordinary civilian people. They don't have a police background, but they're thoroughly checked with. They're thoroughly checked, so we make sure that we have a background check on them. And these are people who are capable of taking phone calls. We train them on the kinds of questions they have to ask, the kinds of information that they have to get, so that they can get as much information as they can to forward it to the police, so that when the police get it, they've got a good pile of information. There's no point in saying, well, there's a guy down the street, like, 3 blocks from now, and
Drives
we
a
think
red
he's...
car.
Yeah,
with
no,
wheels.
but we think he's got to grow up. Well, that's really not very good for the police, because they don't have time and they don't have the resources.
And they don't want to break into the wrong house
No,
or
no,
beat
for
up
sure.
the wrong guy or whatever.